As the world turns and time slips from a limp into a pestilent crawl, I'm left bunkered in my laboratory, toiling over my proverbial creative fields. As you all know, the fickle and lycanthropic nature of inspiration works in ebbs and flows, and the muse isn't always there for us. But, do you know what it is? Video games. Lately, there's been some major releases, some of which are from my favorite series of all time, but I believe in respecting the chronology, and as Orson Welles once said, an artist has to always be out of step with his time. And with that I say,
the French champagne.
And let's dive feet first into Doom 2016.
I'm willing to take full responsibility for the horrible events of the last 24 hours, but you must understand. Our interest in their world was purely for the betterment of mankind. Everything has clearly gotten out of hand now, yes. But it was worth the risk, I assure you.
The story of Doom 2016 actually begins back in August 2007 when aerospace engineer and Giga Chad John Carmack announced that Doom 4 was in the books, and by May 7, 2008, id Software had already started development. However, id Software was also in the midst of a lengthy development cycle with Rage, and from there, things didn't look much better for D4. After being acquired by ZeniMax, all future id releases would be published by motherfucking Bethesda Softworks. And as Rage shipped and the team switched focus, insider sources started to leak out info of the new Doom and detailed mismanagement and a hard reset in the whole project back in 2011. Even still, the post-2011 build was literally described as a lame mess. By 2013, most of the tech engine team at id started to jump ship, including the big dog Carmack saying fuck it and going to work at Oculus as CTO because that's what the fuck big dogs do. Flash forward to E3 2015 and lo and behold, the days of hardship, teasers, and murmurings of development hell were long gone, and the official gameplay trailer dropped and put the game over. Now that's all swell, but 4 years later, in the wake of a much buzzed about sequel that I've mindfully held off from playing to do this, how has the game held up? And for those who had their eyes fixed on eternity, would it be worth it to revisit the foundation? Now, I personally don't know anyone who doesn't at least have a passing knowledge of Doom in its many forms, and frankly, if you're one of the uninitiated,
I don't want to do business with you.
But since I'm such a sweetie, I'll break it down. You're a bad motherfucker who's gotten caught up with some daggone demons, and you need to apply several mud holes into many asses. And that's all you need to know, bitch. Context is for cowards. It's all about the ripping and the tearing.
The ripping and the tearing. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
Effectively speaking, 2016 is a reboot along the lines of Wolfenstein: The New Order, setting up a thematic clean slate where you bust out of a box like fucking Chainsaw Charlie, and immediately get amongst it. I cannot stress enough how much I enjoyed the intro in my first playthrough years ago. From there, the game quite literally takes you to hell and back across 13 levels worth of blisteringly fast exorcism and exploration, with a serviceable story that has an ending about as abrupt as the beginning. Without spending too much time on the story, you are the Doomslayer, a dauntless warrior tasked with dunking on the legions of hell and protecting what's left of humanity. Along the way, you meet a towering machine with a love for captive TED Talks, Tilda Swinton,
Authorization, Olivia Pierce,
and your trusty AI Vector. While the gameplay takes center stage, there's tons of lore in the audio logs and hell things that really flesh out the Doomslayer and his enemies. The Doomslayer himself has some pretty great moments of wordless characterization throughout the game as well. Besides that, the narrative is pretty trim but engaging and steeped enough in its own style that it works wonderfully. Now to the most important bit, the gameplay. Doom has always been about how quickly and accurately you can fling both bullets and yourself at demons, and 2016 is an absolute clinic on how to do this in a modern setting. There's no sprint. By default, you tactically haul ass. There's There's no traditional ADS save for scopes and hard look on a few weapons. There's no snap and cover, you're gonna have to get good and learn to stick and move. To me, this feels like the Michael McDonald of video games. Sure, there's been innumerable genres and innovations in music since the last time yacht rock was hot, but all you need is feathered hair, a Fender Rhodes, years of refinement, and the husky coo of a fucking angel to make some wakes. Blood wakes. And the Wave Runner in this metaphor is a classic assortment of weapons and some gadgets new to the game to help rip and tear. The weapons in this game are pretty choice. Basically, it's a love letter to the Doom 2 arsenal, and everything feels viable and flexible enough for some really sweet flow state moments in battle. Everything from plasma rifles to rocket launchers to a chainsaw. The design of these weapons are wonderful. They all have a real sense of weight, and the sound and animation add even more to the visceral joy of just shooting shit in this game, which, by the way, is something you don't really pay attention to until it's there. There's also some pretty interesting weapons like the Hellshot, which are multiplayer only, but I'll touch on that in a bit. The Glory Kill system gives you an option to snap necks and cash checks whether you're out of ammo or just feeling extra nasty. Some say the Glory Kills ruin the tempo of combat, but I don't see it. The addition of runes and rune trials add even more options to change the way you kill shit, and the game doesn't even stop there with customization. For example, getting footage, I found myself having a ton of fun using the rune that gives me infinite ammo when my armor's over a certain number. So that means I can just run super shoddy and let vengeance take over. Oh, I also failed to mention the centered view model option if you're wanting to go full boomer mode. I guess this is a good point to mention the little touches like that I kept finding in this game that made me feel like this wasn't a normal AAA reboot, but a game made by people who actually fucking enjoyed Doom and get what makes it so great. The hidden classic Doom sections on every level, color-coded keycards and doors, having lore that basically makes every Doom WAD and mod canon through virtue of the Doomslayer's constant urge to terrorize hell, is my favorite example in particular. I really enjoy feeling like some of the strange mods and overhauls I've played in the past all being part of an endless campaign against demons. Speaking of sexual confusion, I think it's time we talk about the maps in this game. On one hand, I adore the pacing and variety of levels, like between the UAC and Hell areas, and I especially appreciate the design of the arena segments like Gorness, for example. Stepping into a conspicuously open room to a few stragglers and a meaty demon spawner, and hearing the cold, dispassionate call of demonic activity being at critical levels, like some prelude to the symphonic slaughter about to unfold just as soon as I tear at the very womb from what... What I meant to say was, I sure do enjoy this instead of another brown and gray corridor shooter. But my main issue with not just the levels, but the overall game is undoubtedly the actual in-game map itself. Listen, I'm no game developer, and I'm certainly not a fucking cartographer either, but I really do not think I should have had as much trouble trying to figure out where the fuck I'm at in the pause menu as I did. Again, I might just be dumb, but I have a hard time visualizing where I am in relation to my marker on the map. It's like the map is relative to the first pass, textureless, overtime on a Thursday night, and I got an hour drive back to the house versions of levels. But besides that, just about every other aspect of Doom's campaign and gameplay feels lovingly detailed and designed to maximize slaying and therefore maximizing fun. As for the multiplayer I mentioned a bit ago, mechanically it's a solid no-frills arena shooter with some interesting game modes, maps, ample character customization and progression, and some brand new weapons and playable demons that weren't in the single player. The multiplayer exclusive weapons are all pretty neat looking Quake-side grades, and the two new demons are fun to both play as and against. So much so that I feel that all of these things would have fit excellently in the campaign. Although I could see time being an issue, especially with the type of development timeline these guys had, but I'm just nitpicking at this point. For me, the two greatest aspects of the multiplayer in this game are the demon runes and the way the devs handled post-release updates. The playable demons are accessed by picking up runes that spawn in the map, typically in the spot that's the easiest to get killed at, but if you manage to yoink a rune, you get to absolutely body everyone else for a short time. That's just the perfect amount of gimmick one could add to a boomer arena shooter like this and it not take away from the core skill-based gameplay. And boy, do I absolutely love that shit. But what I love even more is the amount of content added to the multiplayer over 7 free updates along with 3 multiplayer DLCs. In particular, Update 6.66
have opened unwanted doors to evil dark portals, blown wide open, now clogged with demonic forces, gnawing at the fear that is evoked by the innocent.
Guess we're at the gates of hell.
which not only just gave all 3 paid DLC packs to owners of the game, but completely reworked the clumsy, randomized unlock system to a challenge-based progression, more in the vein of COD or other popular video game. That type of interest shown in keeping the online fresh in a more single-player focused game is incredibly rare these days, especially from anyone in cahoots with fucking Bethesda. Whether the devs truly loved working on this game or they were thralls to some demonic oppressor that forced them to never stop patching, the effort should be applauded nonetheless. Great job, boys. Playing through this game with more attentive eyes for this review really helped me appreciate how great the atmosphere is. The stories told in the environments are some of my favorite. What happened to this guy?
Unless the demonic threat.
For as much as I praise and enjoy the gameplay, the absolute crown jewel is the music and sound design in this bitch. I could cut an entire video just about the production involved with making the soundtrack alone, but for everyone's sake, I'll gush for just a little bit. I mentioned it prior, but the in-game sounds by audio designer Chad Mossholder, audio director Chris Height, and all else involved have made some of the best sci-fi combat noises in media, and they deserve the highest praise. The mastermind of Doom soundtrack is none other than composer Mick motherfucking Gordon, who some of you may know from his exceptional work on the Killer Instinct OST. I love this soundtrack so much for so many different reasons. Mick's approach to scoring video games is second to none. According to an interview with NoClip, which is really great by the way, check it out in the description, Mick wanted to have the music stand front and center and to reward and motivate the player through combat, and I can absolutely say it works. Being a music man myself, I value the soundtrack to games almost more than the visuals, and this is MGS3 levels of musical excellence. Grinding industrial synths, 9-string guitars in drop H, pulse-pounding war drums, a pitch-shifted chainsaw. It sounds like Broken Arrow Reznor's brain stuck inside of a Warhammer dreadnought that's addicted to Doom speedruns, especially with all the nods to the Bobby Prince soundtracks from back in the day. Mick even constructed a unique Doom instrument that is basically a raw sine wave cannon directed into a myriad of processing pedals and compressors to generate sound in the same way he envisioned Argent Energy to work in the game. If you don't think that's the sickest shit ever, then punch yourself in the mouth. That's not even the half of it either. There's even spectrogram Easter eggs in the actual music itself. All in all, this is not only an exceptional video game score, but an incredible record that can stand on its own. It's also alarmingly compatible with Death Grips, which is not only dangerous for my environment, but everyone around me. So in conclusion, is it worth it to play Doom 2016 today? Fuck yes! Whether you skipped it to play Eternity, haven't played it in a couple years such as myself, or are completely new to the series, 2016 is one of the best revitalizations of the old guard I've seen in a long time. This game is quintessentially Doom, and if that was the devs' goal, then they achieved it and then some.